I'm following up from my last video, which was on sexual shame. It was more like a relationships advice video. The premise of this whole video is going to be on whether it's actual inherent or innate insecurities, or is it just a general societal fat phobia that we have and we have internalized in ourselves, even if we don't think that we're fat phobic, but it's just things that we're subconsciously saying to ourselves and judging other people as well. But this video, like the last one, is sponsored by Beducated, which has a lot of resources, and it's an educational platform basically for sex and relationships. Also it touches on body image issues too. But the video I'll be referencing, or the course that I'll be referencing in this, will be the porn demystified, because I think because it's a taboo subject, it's not really something that we as a group talk about, or talk about how it affects our own body image or how it affects our sex lives or affects our relationships. In the porn demystified course, it talks about how it kind of affects your view of yourself, affect your relationship with sex and with other partners. I know personally, I'm aware that all porn is like, the end product is edited, the models can be photoshopped and airbrushed. A lot of it is male pleasure focused. Us watching that then is a mirror to how we actually live our lives. We can think, just subconsciously are learning that it's only the man that matters, and we have to be there just to look good so that they feel pleasure, when that's not the case at all. As women, we do deserve pleasure as well. With the website Beducated, if you want to get a free 24-hour trial, you can use the code Keelan on the website and you can get that, or you can get 70% off an annual membership. If you want to watch my 2 other videos as well, I've referenced that website. Is the one on open relationships and the one on relationship advice. So it's about sex shame and blowjobs. I give tips on how to give a blowjob. Unforgettable blowjob, by the way. But yeah, I really recommend Beducated. I've learned so much since getting it. When it's not taught in schools, how else are we supposed to find it? Usually people resort to mainstream porn, and obviously there's a lot of inherent issues with that, as we all know, because it's fake, it promotes violence, usually male dominated. But what Sophia Hagen talks about in her book, how fat is like a demonized word now, how people will go out of their way to avoid using the word because it is attached with such negative connotations, even though it's just a word. I feel like this could be still up for debate, because if the word is offensive to people, then I don't know why you would use it. But I think from her point of view, it's like we should stop using it in a negative way and just start using it freely, so there isn't such a like tiptoeing around the subject of people are just fatter. That's what they are. It's like, stop being scared to use the word fat. Let me know in the comments. I don't know if it does offend people. I do feel an element of guilt or shame saying it out of my mouth. It just doesn't feel right. It feels venomous, but maybe that's because of how it's taught to us, or it's internalized. Our internalized fat phobia is telling us that it is a bad word and you should feel bad about yourself for saying it, and you should feel bad about yourself for being it as well. It could be like combating your own discriminations or your own prejudices that are within you if you do start using it more freely, or start using it in a way where it's not negative. It's just like a descriptive word. But anyway, I asked in my stories when people thought that they first felt like they had issues with their body image, and a lot of people, it was really sad, a lot of people said around 4 or 5. I was mostly all under the age of 10, and then the next story was said, how did that come about? Was it a comment from someone else, or was it just like a known internalized thing? Was it mass media? And most of the time people said it was comments from other people when they started in school, or comparing themselves to their peers in like primary school. And a lot of people said a comment from their mother, which is probably the most harrowing and hard thing as well, because especially in Irish culture, a lot of Irish mammies are like, oh, I'm so fat, I'm gonna not eat now for 2 weeks. They've associated a lot with their weight or their body shape, a lot with their worth, and because if you're seeing that growing up, obviously you're going to internalize it and feel the same things too. I know personally, my mom, I've even shown it on a vlog before, she literally like grabs the skin on her stomach and like shakes it. She's like, that's horrible, I'm fucking disgusting, or whatever. She never commented on our bodies or anything. I never experienced that, but it was just the way she was talking about herself, and I would view her as quite a slim person, and I know that she's very healthy and I think she's beautiful, so I thought it was completely irrelevant to her to be commenting on her body when I was younger. Luckily it hasn't affected me now that I'm a grown adult, but it is kind of instilled in you as a child, then reinforced later on in life. I think more so what affects me is like what I see on social media. So what I see on Instagram, when I see like a skinny model, I think that the first thought is usually like, I'm not going to be widely loved as this person. I'm not going to be seen as beautiful or good looking or attractive as much as this person. I'm not going to be seen as sexy. People won't think I'm sexy. You're told as well, especially as a woman, that if you're not good looking, you don't really amount to too much. Even if you're smart, funny, cool, stylish, if you don't fit this criteria of within the beauty standard, essentially worthless or not useful at all, or people would be like, oh, what a shame, it would be so much better if they were just a bit skinnier, if they were a bit slimmer, or this outfit would look a lot better if they were half the size. As well, even referencing back to the mothers thing, I don't think it's their fault either, because obviously it was instilled in them as children, and then they don't really know how to cope with that, and it's only become a conversation as of recently, whereas when our mothers were young, it was instilled in them so much that they would judge people for being of a bigger size. And a lot of that has affected daughters or children in general, from wanting to get approval from their mothers, and mothers trying to gain control over their child's weight as well. So it would be like dieting, portion control, and then a lot of like fluctuating in weight, and then actually feeling more out of control or out of tune or disassociated from your body than you were beforehand. What perpetuates the negative thoughts on your body is probably like people that you love and respect commenting on it, or not giving you the approval that you want, or not telling you that you're beautiful or that it's okay, or just accepting that's the way that you are. It's like constantly telling you over and over again, and reiterating that it's not okay that you look like that. As well as that, within your inner circle, or like just your immediate circle and people that you love, it's the outside world that has such unrealistic expectations for you too. You're constantly bombarded with media and advertisements on beautiful women, photoshopped people like the Victoria's Secret angel. They're so skinny, and they, you hear about a Victoria's Secret workout, or like how to get a 10-minute ab blast, going on a Victoria's Secret diet for 2 weeks, eating like Kendall Jenner for 2 weeks. It's just out there to make you feel shit about yourself, because the weight loss industry, even overall the beauty industry, the cosmetics industry, well, like the beauty industry, the cosmetic industry, skincare, all these fitness programs, gyms, diet pills, slim shakes, it's all worth billions and billions, and I suppose they thrive off people feeling shit about themselves. There wouldn't be any profit to be made if people loved themselves and accepted themselves for just what they look like or what they came out of the womb as. Another place where it's reinforced is a lot in, say, cartoons, for example. I know Sophia Hagen uses the example of Ursula and the Little Mermaid. Although it's fictional, it's still like a mirror of what people think of in real life. She's depicted as a villain, she steals Ariel's voice, and then is just, overall evil, but they make her like of a bigger size in the film just to reiterate how evil she is. A lot of other things like Homer Simpson in The Simpsons, your man from Family Guy, and they're all seen as like lazy, dumb, unattractive, just like as a focal point of ridicule, and it's supposed to be like a comedic factor that they're fat. How that integrates into everyday life, or like real life, non-fictional life, not a cartoon, is that people experience then medical biases or implicit bias, and then also it's harder for them to get jobs because they're deemed as lazy or dumb. Implicit bias, or the medical bias, is that someone who was fat who came into the doctor and said, oh, there's like a problem with my breathing or whatever, they would just immediately assume that it has something to do with their weight, or that they have to lose weight or like go on a diet, and not actually give them the extensive tests and treatments that like a slimmer person would. And I think it's really underappreciated how much thin people are like endowed with privilege, because they're not seen as like lazy or unhealthy, and would be treated completely differently in a job interview than a fatter person would, even if the person who was bigger was actually technically more healthy. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions within scientific literature as well, that obesity has been seen as something that is directly in relation to a leading cause of death, whereas it's actually with low level activity and bad diet. But a skinny person could have absolutely no activity and be eating a terrible diet, but just have a fast metabolism and have terrible insides, like failing organs. But someone who was fatter but actually exercised a lot, but maybe had like a what's that called, like a damaged thyroid gland, would probably be assumed that they're gonna like die quicker, or that they're more unhealthy. People use the word health as a justification to criticize other people's diets, or criticize other people's sizes, or say, oh, like, I'm just worried about you, I just want you to be as healthy as you can, while also just shaming the person. But shame has been proven to actually directly affect someone's weight or someone's health more so than their diet or how much they exercise. It's the hurtful comments that intrinsically make them more upset with themselves, more full of shame and depressed, and can be the leading cause of hypertension and heart disease. I know, as hard as it is, it's probably so hard to say like, oh, just ignore the external voices and cultivate your own self-worth. It's kind of patronizing to even say those things, to be like, don't listen to other people. But a lot of times as humans, we do care for other people's approval, because our primal instinct is like to be accepted by the tribe for survival, as a survival instinct. So we want to be accepted and we want to be loved by other people. That's the bottom line. The bottom issue is that everyone just wants to be loved, and I think because it's instilled in us that if we don't have this particular body shape, it's impossible for other people to love us or to deem us as attractive. And I suppose if you are in a heteronormative state and you want to get approval or acceptance off another man who is constantly consuming mainstream porn that isn't censored or isn't consumed ethically, it's going to affect how he sees the world. He's going to think that he's entitled to someone who looks like that when it's completely unrealistic. It genuinely is not real. It's not an accurate representation of what the real world is like, and then it's harder for them to accept what they're given too. Even though they might be like balding and, you know, have a beer belly and back hair, they still think that they are entitled to like a size 4 prepubescent looking woman. The whole world is literally designed to make you feel ashamed, so that you keep buying things that will make you feel better or make you be deemed as more attractive or lovable. Obviously the most powerful thing you can do is cultivate like radical self-love. Love yourself regardless of what everyone else is telling you or regardless of what the whole world is telling you. But again, that is really, really hard, and I suppose the small steps that you can take to go towards that, to reduce your media consumption, so try to go on your phone less. Also to surround yourself with other people who do love their bodies and are of a different shape and size to you, because I think a lot of people are wired to go for people who are on like the same level of attractiveness as them, but to try branch out and make friends with people and try not to pay attention to what they look like or expect them to be nice and funny just because they're good looking. And that's I suppose pretty privilege of it, that anyone would think that you're automatically intelligent, smart, funny just because you're better looking than someone next to you who could be way more interesting and way more intellectual than the person who's like really, really good looking. Not to say that all good looking people are wet wipes, because I highly doubt it. I mean, look at me. Also to try consume feminist porn. Maybe try watch feminist porn with your partner, so you know that they're not consuming stuff that's an unrealistic or inaccurate representation of the actual real world. It can help you improve your sex life. It's supporting sex workers and giving them a safer environment to work in as well. It's going in the right direction to accepting all different types of bodies, in the right direction as well that women are allowed to enjoy sex too, or have the right to feel pleasure. Another step of like radical self-love and not just acceptance, but like radical self-love of your own body, is to try remind yourself and reiterate that you are your body too, because a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm just living in this vessel, so they're not making the connection of what your external value has on the world, because it would be naive to say that it doesn't, because it absolutely does. But it also, what has a huge effect on how you live your life and how you experience the world is your confidence and your self-assurance within it and within your own body. So to do that and to be like more in tune or connected to your body is to do things like yoga, dance, putting nice food into your body, seeing food as in a more pragmatic way where you see it as fuel rather than something to feel ashamed about or worried, or like counting calories or looking at the fat measurement. Just knowing that it's fueling your body, or if it's going to make you feel good, not look good. So pleasuring yourself, knowing how to pleasure yourself, or having ethical sex or mindful sex, not just like doing things, it's because sometimes people have sex to go outside of their body or to make themselves feel like they're in control, and then you could spiral. Then it could be seen as self-destructive. Another good book to read is The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor, and she talks about a lot how like social commentary on our bodies is completely relentless. It's so hard, how hard it is to cultivate radical self-love, but she also says that she wants to transcend just acceptance, because acceptance isn't inspiring or encouraging to other people. For you to feel radical self-love is also having an effect on the people around you and the people that you love. You want to set an example for them. You want to show them that you can love yourself regardless of what you look like, so it will influence them and inspire them to love themselves as well. Your peers, if you have kids, if you have little brothers and sisters. And to acknowledge that the harmful thoughts that you're thinking about your body isn't you or your thoughts, it's what you've been taught to think about yourself, and it's from the outside world and what they're constantly bombarding you with. It's not like you came out of the womb thinking negative things about your body. It's usually triggered by something like a comment from someone else. I remember the first time that I was aware of my body, or maybe insecure or conscious, was when I was on a school trip. I was on a bus to Carlingford. I was probably about 10 and had a seatbelt on, but my top had like risen up a bit, so the bottom of my stomach, which obviously you were in a position where you're sitting down and also the seatbelt is like pushing it, so I had like a bulge, a small, like I I was 10. Do you know what I mean? I had a small bulge like coming underneath the seatbelt, and a boy that I'd fancied pointed it out to me. So that was the first time I felt conscious of my body, and I was comparing myself to my friend at the time who was like always had after school activities and was like really fit. She literally had a six-pack, and I was like, I don't know why I don't have a six-pack. As a 10-year-old, that's a really unrealistic expectation to have of yourself. But even back then, you know, I didn't have social media until I was probably about 15 or 16. I was luckier in that way, whereas if I did have Tumblr or TikTok or any of these things when I was a bit younger, and it just caught me when my brain was very malleable or vulnerable, it probably would have affected me a lot more. And I have seen it affect a lot of people that are close to me and I love in my life. But I think that younger generations now, it's probably affecting them a lot younger than it would have in my generation, because, you know, everyone has phones and everyone has access to the internet, and to be comparing themselves to all these pictures and videos of other people who are seen as loved and respected. It's always like really skinny models that are famous and well loved and seen as like widely attractive to a lot of people. So that's what you're comparing yourself to. Followers now are seen as a metric of success or lovability, and it's usually the people who fall in line in the beauty standard that would be followed by all of these people, seen as loved or more lovable than the next person. This rigid, like strict beauty standard can only work under capitalism, because flexibility of gender or beauty doesn't work under that. Because if it was like, oh, they you know, we're celebrating their differences, it doesn't promote then buying the same product for universally. It's like you can buy this one red lipstick which would fall in line with the beauty standard because maybe big red lips are like seen as beautiful now, whereas if all bodies and shapes and genders were celebrated, this wouldn't work as much. I think it also has to be acknowledged that this rigid beauty standard is interchangeable. It changes constantly to fit in whatever trends there is. Like, for example, in the 16th, 17th century, fat was seen as a sign of wealth. In the early 2000s, it was like you were getting slagged for having an ass or having big lips, but now it's changing all the time, and it'll probably change again in another 10 years. Take actions towards radical self-love is to acknowledge that everyone takes part in body shaming, even if you don't notice it or not. If you are shaming yourself, that means you do take part in body shaming, and you are probably slightly fatphobic. It's not your own fault. It's obviously stuff that you've learned throughout growing up. To take the actions against it is to start loving yourself, and then you won't put as much pressure on yourself, but you'll stop judging other people. And I think you shouldn't be putting such high expectations on yourself that you wouldn't put on the people that you love, or just random people that you see on the street. Fat shaming or fat phobia is what you learned through observation, so you have to acknowledge that, and acknowledge that it is ubiquitous. It's really, really hard to avoid. But again, like, to reduce your media intake, surround yourself with people that love their body or that are going to encourage you to love your body, but also to be very aware of like a toxic mutual body shaming friendship where someone's like, oh no, you're so skinny but I'm so horrible and fat, where they feel like they have to insult themselves to give you a compliment, and you know that they're doing that. It's like they're putting themselves in competition against you. That is a really toxic environment to be in, and to make sure that you're not surrounding yourself with people that are doing that, but also that you're not doing that either. And know that there's a huge difference between vanity and just appreciating yourself and loving yourself. I think the difference is vanity would be more so like thinking that you're better than other people, whereas loving yourself can encourage other people to love themselves just as much as you do. When you're on this like journey, when you're on a journey of self-love, it's important not to feel shame about your shame either, or to feel embarrassed about your shame, that you're like, oh, everyone else around me seems to love themselves. People who are seemingly very confident and self-assured, they also have days where they're like insecure, or they look in the mirror and they don't like what they see. But it's usually only a small portion of their life, and it's not overly consuming them or hindering their relationships with other people or hindering their self-esteem. To not feel guilty if you do from time to time feel insecure or feel shame. It's what you learned through growing up and what you were taught through observation. It is really hard to unlearn those things and to retrain your brain to be more accepting. Missy? Oh, my baby. So yeah, let me know if you like this video. Also, if you want to try Up Educated, you can use the link in my description and use the code Keelan for 70% off an annual subscription or a 24-hour free trial. I really recommend the Porn Demystified course, just to educate yourself more on how these things that you wouldn't even notice has an effect on your body image, or how you see yourself, or how you see your relationship with others. So if anyone else has any takes on fat phobia versus insecurities, the Books again that I referenced in this video were The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor and also Happy Fat by Sophia Hagen. Both brilliant reads if you want to learn how to love yourself. It's good to keep reminding yourselves of these things too, because sometimes you can get yourself into a rut and forget everything that you've worked for. Not to be hard on yourself. Alright, bye, love you.